Good evening. I'm Nina Keck, a reporter with Vermont Public Radio and Vermont PBS. And I hope you enjoyed tonight's special screening of For the Love of Rutland. I appreciate your patience tonight. We were experimenting with a new platform, and it took a little bit to get the kinks out. This film is a co-presentation of America Reframed, World Channel, and Made Here with Vermont PBS. And tonight I'm joined by filmmaker Jennifer Maytorena Taylor and several other of the folks that you saw in the film. We've got Stacie Griffin, the main character, as well as former Rutland Alderwoman Lisa Ryan and Jim Sabataso, who was a cinematographer on the film. And we'll talk with all of them and take some of your questions. But first, Jennifer, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Besides making documentaries, you're also an associate professor of film and digital media at the University of California in Santa Cruz. And I know California is your home. It has been for a long time. But you have strong personal ties to Rutland too. And I'd like you to talk about those connections and how they led you to make this film.
Thank you, Nina. And it's great to be here. I'm so excited to do this event. And again, I also echo your thanks to everyone who bore with all the technical challenges. It's just so fun learning new technology all the time. But yes, I consider myself both a Californian and a Vermonter. My family's from Los Angeles, and on my dad's side, we've been in the Southern California, Northern Mexico area for many generations. But as a child, my parents moved me and my siblings to Rutland. So I went to Northeast Elementary School, and I went to Mill River Union High School. My mom still lives in the area. My sister still lives in the area. And, you know, Rutland and the surrounding area of Rutland became another part of my homescape. So even though I came back to California relatively soon after I finished high school, you know, I consider myself sort of a citizen of both places and very shaped by, I think, some of the stories you saw in the film, particularly how people can work together in a community that has some hurts and some divisions, but nonetheless stays together.
This film hit close to home for me on a lot of levels. And one of the things that I as a reporter for Vermont Public Radio, I was covering the refugee debate that was going on. And I'd often run into you or Jim Sabataso at different events watching you film it. We also traveled together to Amman, Jordan, which was really exciting. And both of us trying to get a better understanding of the process of refugee resettlement before the refugees came to Rutland. Those plans took a huge turn when then President Trump signed his executive orders, and suddenly refugees from Muslim countries like Syria weren't allowed. And suddenly we had to take a right turn. How did all of those changes affect your movie?
Well, I mean, as you know, of course, Nina, you know, we did get to travel together, and I'm so grateful that you still managed to be in the film just a little bit with your your audio cameo, doing that very important update about the arrival of the second and third families. But you know, I think in some respects, speaking as a filmmaker, less as a sort of a citizen in a way, you know, it's always kind of a terrible challenge when you have a set of expectations of something that you think will happen. And I think it's a very good challenge to stay with a story as it changes and to try to dig deeper into what's not obvious. And what, you know, I mean, you know, and everyone in Vermont knows, I mean, Rutland got a lot of attention during the resettlement controversy. And in some respects, it got framed, I think, quickly as you know, us versus them, you know, left versus right, however you want to characterize it. And there's so much more, I think, in our lives than just where we adhere on one side or another of a political line. And our lived experiences are so much more complex and rich than what controversies sometimes show us. And so in a certain sense, the expected not happening, I think, allowed me and Jim and Stacie and Lisa and Hannah and other folks in the film to really dig much more deeply into ourselves as people about what makes us find grace, what makes us find ways through our differences. So in some strange way, it was, terrible. I mean, I don't want to, what happened, but in a certain sense, filmmaking, we made it work. And I think it made hopefully a better and more resonant film about just humanity.
Well, now is probably a good time to bring in our other guests tonight and some of the people that you just mentioned. Rutland resident Stacie Griffin, whose story is the focal point of your film, is with us. Hi.
Hi.
Stacie.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. Jim Sabataso is also with us tonight. Jim is a reporter for the Rutland Herald, and you did a lot of the cinematography work, I know, for this movie. Jim, nice to see you.
Hi, Nina.
Hey, and Lisa Ryan, former Rutland City Alderwoman, is here as well. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Nina. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah. So, Stacie, I want to ask you, how did you end up meeting Jennifer?
She happened to be sitting with a mutual friend of ours in Baxter Street Park. Baxter Street Park had just been opened. It's the park in the neighborhood. And we just got to talking, and you just watched. That's how it happens.
It was love at first sight, Stace, wasn't it?
It was. It was.
Yeah.
It so was.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, how did you know that Stacie's story would make a good narrative line for your film to follow?
I'm not kidding. It was love at first sight. I mean, anybody who knows Stacie, you can see from the film what a brilliant person, what a wonderful heart and open person. And I because, as I mentioned, I didn't want the film to just turn on a controversy and just go back and forth between two sides. I don't like that kind of filmmaking. I don't think we live our lives that way, despite the fact, we all have strong beliefs. I think the idea of living in community is finding all the nuance. So I was looking for somebody who wasn't already signed up on a side in a certain sense. And I also knew, that the severity of the opioid epidemic and some of the other issues that the film talks about were really, really important for us to address. So I was hoping I would find someone who, would come at all of these issues from their own lived experience and their own complexity. And I mean, I don't know how you could find someone more wonderful to follow than Stacie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Stacie, in one of the scenes, I remember being struck. The camera is following you around in your home, and you let us into your son Tyler's bedroom. And I think you say something like, "Well, this is real. This is our life. People need to see this." And I remember thinking, as a mom, it would have been, I'm not sure I'd want to let people into my teenage children's, much less my own bedroom. It would be cringeworthy. And I'm just wondering, why did it feel important to you to show that honesty, let us in?
Well, I mean, because I feel like, the film is based on honesty, and reality and life. And, just because I live differently than somebody else, it doesn't mean that I don't have a voice. Mm-hmm. We all have struggles. We all have, struggles in different ways, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, we're all human. And we're all equal. We all have voices, and we all deserve to be heard.
Lisa Ryan, I want to ask you a question. You grew up in Rutland, and there was a scene in the film where Pastor Hannah Rogers is speaking to the Board of Aldermen, and there are a lot of folks that have been invited to talk about the refugee issue, and you hear a lot of people that are expressing some fears. These people are going to end up being heroin addicts. They're going to, they're other people. They're going to be a drain on the taxpayer. And then Hannah Rogers stands up, and I remember her saying that, we are on the world stage in Rutland, and, we are a place that does not want to talk about xenophobia. Mm-hmm. You were at that Board of Aldermen meeting. Do you remember what was going through your mind when she said that?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I do remember very vividly. I was literally, I think, in my head and heart saying, "Thank God, Hannah, at least somebody has said something that makes sense and is really meaningful. She really hit it home with what she said, and she's a well-respected person in our community. I have a dear amount of respect for her, and just to hear her be able to kind of bring everything together and say, like, how do we want to be looked at? Like, does Rutland want to be looked at as racist and xenophobic and all of these things? And she just really laid it out there in an honest and genuine way that just really captured me emotionally.
I remember that night very well. I was in that meeting too.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Sabataso, let me ask you a question. This film includes some very unflattering images of Rutland, I think. And I'm wondering, as someone that was born in Rutland, you love the city like we all do. Did you get any pushback? Have you heard anybody say, "Wow, come on, this is hard to watch"? Or
not yet. I'm still, I guess, kind of waiting for that. What I've heard from some folks has been, thanks for, being honest, being kind of real about what this is. Again, like Stacie said, like this is real. And that was something that, Jen and I really set out to do. And we had a lot of conversations about being authentic and not doing something that went for the low hanging fruit of kind of doing the drive-by sort of journalism where, hey, look at Rutland. And we tried to avoid a lot of the cliches that you get when you go down these, roads with narratives around, addiction and, post-industrial communities and it's all been done. So we really wanted to do something that felt honest. And, we had a lot of gut check conversations. And, a lot of the, and Jen would ask me too, like, do I feel like I'm, participating in something that is going to, I'm going to face that blowback. I'm the one who does, live here, as part of our filmmaking team, the one who's going to have to deal with, whatever fallout there is. And I was never concerned about that because I think we really told something that felt genuine and authentic, and I really do stand by it. But as a roundabout way of answering the question, again, I haven't had any real pushback where somebody's called me out and said we did something that they didn't necessarily agree with.
what was it like, Jim? I want to ask you one quick follow-up. What was it like to see your hometown once the movie was finished?
It felt special, and there's so many little landmarks and cameos and things. That first scene in the park, for example, and there's the band playing. That's my father's band, and it kind of happened by accident that we were filming that night, and my dad's band was playing in the park, and that it made it into the final cut of the film. And I wasn't expecting that. And when I saw one of the first takes of this, it kind of just made me smile. Like there's something sort of special and dear to me personally, but it's been, it feels special, and it feels very dear to me to see Rutland on the screen the way it's been portrayed.
I worked in a cameo of my mom.
Where was your mom in the movie?
Scene in the library when they're having the rally about when Don Chaffee's talking in the Rutland First thing. My mom was there, and and I do want to just say one thing. Jim also was really, he not only did extra cinematography, he also was a field producer and really such a collaborator. This would have been impossible to make without Jim, without the gut checks, without the knowledge and the sensitivity. So and impossible to make without Stacie. I mean, this is a group project, a group effort.
Stacie, you live in the Northwest neighborhood and right across from that new playground. And
I'm actually down the road now. I'm still on Baxter, but I'm down the road now.
But I think in one place the movie talks about that Northwest neighborhood might be where some of the problems are, but that neighborhood has to be the solution. And I'm wondering, in the years since you filmed this movie, do things seem different in your neighborhood? Better, worse? Are you seeing a change?
No. I feel about the same. And honestly, I think COVID has taken part in that,
That's tough.
unfortunately. Would you agree, Jim, Lisa?
Yeah. I don't know, Lisa, if you want to speak to that, but I know, I feel like some efforts have stalled out, and there's been, as a result of COVID, and there's just really been that lack of connection, that momentum that was really there.
It's kind of, put a pall on everything. Lisa Ryan, right now, refugees from Afghanistan are being resettled in Rutland, and there doesn't seem to be nearly the divide that there was when the Syrian refugees people were planning for them. Mayor David Allaire says he supports the Afghans. He supports this, even though he was against the Syrian refugee program. So I'm wondering, how do you see what's going on now in the context of when the filming for this film was going on?
Well, it's funny how things work out like that, Nina, right? Like all of a sudden, it's not an issue, and the mayor is supportive. To me, it's quite infuriating, actually. If I'm going to be honest, look at how our city responded back in 2016 and 2017 for the Syrian refugees coming here to live, to build a life, and the efforts that were put in to not make it happen, or to say disgusting rumors and things. Like, just so much energy was put in to that not happening, that it absolutely blows my mind that we have Afghanistan folks coming here now, living in our community now, and nobody says a peep. Nobody. Especially the people who are against the Syrian refugees. So for me, it tells a lot. And if I were to describe that to you all tonight, we'd be here all night. But I think it's pretty obvious. It says a lot about our leadership. It says a lot about, the city of Rutland and the folks who live here. And just to see that stark difference between, 4 to 5 years.
Jennifer, I want to ask you, as someone who spent some of your formative years growing up in Rutland and now being away and having made this movie, how has doing this film changed your views of Rutland? Has it changed your views of Rutland?
Well, I think in some ways it gave me more appreciation for the parts of the community that really stick together, for the care, for the love. We called it For the Love of Rutland. Jim and I think Stacie, I think you were involved in that too, struggling for a title. And, For the Love of connotes a certain amount of frustration, right? Like you bang your thumb and you might be, for the love of Pete or whoever. So it's meant to be a little exasperated and loving at the same time. I think my sense of the place to incorporate what Lisa was just speaking to, to incorporate what Stacie says is necessary at some point in the film. She says this is about the good, the bad, the indifferent. We had to be honest, and we had to look hard at things that don't work for folks, the things that are unfair, the things that are perpetuating wrongs, things that are making people feel less than. That exists. It's not unique to Rutland. It happens everywhere. What you can see in a small community is you can see those dynamics play out much more easily than you can in a bigger community. And that was partly why I wanted to make the film here, because to me, it's a study of human nature and a study of community. And I don't think there's any community that's immune from the good and the bad. So I guess it's kind of intensified my sense of Rutland as a real place, if that makes any sense. And in a certain way, maybe increased both my love and also my frustration with it.
Karen wrote in, wow, this should be required viewing for all who live in Rutland, in the whole county. And it's really interesting seeing your community with fresh eyes. I think I found myself captivated also by the intimacy, Stacie, the fact that you were so forthcoming, so open, and we could see your frustration. We could see your joy when you got more involved in the community. We saw the courage when, you were nervous before getting up in front of the Project Vision meeting. I could feel myself rooting for you. trying to find your outline for you. But I think there was also some very poignant shots of former Mayor Louris. And Jennifer, talk about did any of those comments surprise you that he was that forthcoming? He's a pretty forthcoming guy.
He's a forthcoming guy. I think actually Jim knows Chris better than I do. And some of the scenes with Chris where he's pretty unvarnished are actually with Jim. So I might defer to Jim on that. I mean, of course, it's a small town, so I think I was able to get to Chris. I think my nephew played hockey with his son. Everybody knows each other. So I think he extended some trust. But I think without Jim on the team, I don't think we would have been able to film as frankly. So Jim, I think you really had that relationship with Chris.
Were you surprised, Jim, at his candor? There were a couple of lines that I'm used to his golly willikers and his candor. I was struck by.
He was very candid with us, and having known Chris for a long time, both professionally and personally, he's a straight shooter, and he's got a sharpness to him and a kind of wit, and he's very quick, and he can be kind of catch you off guard with some of his like very blunt ways of putting things. So I wasn't wholly surprised. I think he got very comfortable, like Jen said, in our interactions, where he let his guard down a little bit more, and was able to kind of give some of that, sort of like you say, unvarnished perspective on certain things. Yeah, so it didn't blow me away, but it was certainly some scenes that he definitely stole.
Carolyn wrote in with 2 questions. Is Rutland going to accept refugees from Ukraine? That'll be an interesting question. And also, she wondered what happened to the former mayor. Where is he now? And where is he working, Jim? Do you know what Chris Louris is doing now?
So when you last saw him in the film, he was working for his family's business. He's moved on from that. I don't know exactly what he's doing. Lisa might actually.
I'm forgetting.
Yeah, but I can't recall exactly what he's doing, but something outside the city. I think working at the state level for something. But he's
he does some data analysis and work for a statewide kind of data collection agency. So he's and it's around criminal justice related data and with law enforcement. So very important data that him and his team are leading up and are able to provide some pretty important and critical information to statewide partners.
And connected to work he did before, because as mayor, he did a lot of really, part of our research, we filmed and did a million things that didn't show up in the film, and some was actually seeing what Rutland was doing with data analysis around crime. And I know Chris was a real mover behind that effort.
Yeah, it was. We talked just now about how former Mayor Chris Louris has evolved. Stacie, how have you changed since the film? And did the film change you?
Oh, absolutely. I have grown leaps and bounds. Jim and I were just discussing this actually. But I feel like I've had some setbacks as well. And again, I think a lot of that's due to COVID. I think we all can agree on that. But it's nice to see how I've grown, how my family has grown. And I'm excited for the future, hoping our community resources, just people, citizens in general, just become one. And
how's your son Tyler doing?
he's struggling. A lot of mental health issues going on. Again, I think COVID has affected that aspect. But as a family, we're great. We've grown and we continue to grow daily. And at the end of the day, it's the 3 of us, and it will be the 3 of us. And it's beautiful.
Lisa Ryan, you talked in the film about wanting to figure out how to make people feel welcome and help them, people that may not fit into any particular box that we're used to seeing. We had someone write in, how today can any of us in Rutland or elsewhere help to make healthy, positive changes, even tangible, non-financial contributions to those in need? Which is an interesting question. Lisa Ryan, any ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I think I'm going to kind of piggyback off what Stacie just said, particularly about, connecting people to resources and letting folks know what's available. That's how, we at least all have an equitable opportunity to get our needs met. So, you see it in the film, but when, Stacie was at Project Vision and I was sitting there and I was listening, I could not believe that she wasn't aware of some of the services in the community, one being that I worked at the time. So that really hit home. I'm like, oh my goodness, how does she not know about this? And how do we do a better job of making our, our services more accessible to everybody? So I think like doing that, just that reach out, that just like soft introduction, and if you know of resources, and if you are just positive and connect with people, I think it'll make all the difference. That's the best way for me to answer that question. That's it doesn't cost any money to be nice or to ask questions or meet somebody where they're at.
Jennifer, what's going on with this film moving forward? What happens now? Are there more film festivals that you'll be taking part of? Or with COVID, I know that changed a lot of the normal.
Yeah. I mean, the film came out actually a couple of years ago in festivals. So it's been doing festivals did lots and lots of quite major festivals in the US and North America. And it's streaming right now on the PBS app, on Vermont PBS, on World Channel, and it'll continue to be available online. And then it will also be available soon on more platforms when PBS distribution releases it further. So I think at this point we're pretty much going with the streaming. But that said, because of COVID, we weren't able to do what we wanted to do. Of course, we would have shown it immediately in Rutland had we not been in lockdown. So I regret that we couldn't do in-person things with the film. And I'm very, we're very open and eager. Our partners at World Channel and American Documentary were very open to if people want to screen the film in their community. Of course, Lisa, Jim, and Stacie, I've asked them to take up a lot of their time doing panels, but I know, to me, this is the best part of this, is when the four of us get to talk together as a team. So there's more opportunities for that. I think it would be wonderful. I think there's so much engagement. I mean, to piggyback on what Lisa said about what people can do, I feel, Stacie says it in the film, we can do both, right? You come to that point, Stacie, when you and Alicia are talking about both refugees, but also the needs of people who've had other displacing things happen to them, whether it's through multiple generations of poverty, whether it's through struggles to stay in recovery, whether it's through mental health issues, through things that happen to people that are their circumstances, right? And that you come to that generous and I think really holistic way of saying, we can do both. We don't have to politicize how we treat our most vulnerable citizens, including people who would be newcomers or people who are fleeing war and violence. And I think that articulation of that kind of way of living is one I wish we would all adopt. I wish we would all look at each other in the eye and try to see what's human about each other, because we all have it, even if we vehemently disagree.
And I would just like to add that I would like to see a community center. I think that would bridge a lot of the gaps in the resources that we're seeing, and accessibility as well, as Lisa had said.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. And Eric wrote in saying, and I may misphrase this, interesting that all the documentaries of Rutland show the city not rising to be not racist or xenophobic. But basically his question is asking, is Rutland changing? And briefly, I kind of want Stacie, Jim, and Lisa, all three of you to weigh in on this. And as our final thoughts, do you see Rutland, Stacie? Do you see Rutland changing, Stacie?
I don't at this point. To be honest, I don't at this point. And again, a lot of it goes back to COVID, not being able to, make the interactions, connections, and so on and so forth. So at this point, no.
Jim Sabataso, how about you?
Baby steps. I think there are moments, and there have been, there has been some progress made. I think the community still has trouble getting out of its own way a lot of the time. And I think that's something that Lisa will agree we've seen over the years, time and again. And, I think, we've moved past this refugee issue, but we've become a very divided community again around the school mascot issue, which has been really controversial for the community and revealed a lot of the same factions in the community around that issue. And so that was something where it felt like the community was kind of being pulled back after some progress had been made. But, you also look at the current makeup of the Board of Aldermen, which a progressive slate was recently elected, and progressive slate was recently elected to the school board. You have the demographics of the Board of Aldermen skewing younger. I think those are areas we can point to and say, things are starting to change. But, it's been incremental, and I think there's still a long way to go.
Lisa, Ryan?
Yeah, I appreciate this question. I think to be honest, would have to also say no. I think if we're strictly looking through a xenophobic and racist lens, that Rutland is still very much racist and xenophobic. And like Jim pointed out, you see that, most visibly with the last school board members and the nonsense that went on there, and the racism, and just the utter, just volatile, community that was created there. Again, looking up, we have a new slate of folks that are definitely more welcoming and progressive thinking and leading. So for the Board of Aldermen and for the Rutland City School Board. So that, I think, is something to look forward to. And then I just would like to, lastly say that, there's a lot of things we can blame the pandemic on, right? But not everything. The pandemic can't be an excuse for everything. And it certainly should not be an excuse for how welcoming Rutland can or cannot be.
Agree.
Jennifer, last question to you. What's next? What are you working on now?
Oh, well, I'm actually going to drive down to Los Angeles tomorrow and start working on a new film with a journalist partner of mine, just very baby steps. It has to do with the cannabis industry and Russian oligarchs.
Wow. Well, stay tuned. Jennifer Maytorena Taylor, thank you to you. Stacie Griffin, Jim Sabataso, Lisa Ryan. So glad to see all of you again and chat tonight. Appreciate your time. And thank you all for joining us. The recording of this discussion will live at the same link you used to access YouTube tonight. So feel free to watch it again and share it with all of your friends. Thanks and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Anna.